What's going on, everybody? It's Royja coming at you with a brand new video, and if you've seen any of the recent top cut breakdowns, you'll know that our current Yu-Gi-Oh format is in a pretty interesting spot right now. You can practically take any sort of competent deck, slap some staples in there that fit the meta, and you can probably see success at either topping or even winning a regional. Because of this, a lot of players are dipping their toes into the rogue pool right now, as they probably don't want to spend the insane amounts of money that a lot of the top 5 best decks want to charge right now. Speaking of which, if you haven't seen it already, I do have a video on the top 5 best decks of the current format that you can check out in the annotation in the top right, should you be interested. But because of how many different decks you can play right now, it may be a bit hard to figure out which one's right for you. Fear not though, dear viewer, for I'm here to bring you my top 5 rogue decks for the March 2023 Yu-Gi-Oh format. Before we get into this list, let me just be clear that I'm going strictly on the information provided to me by the top cut breakdowns, so if you personally think that one deck ranks above or below another, that's perfectly fine. I'm just using the information provided to me, so be sure to take this in mind and not go after anyone in the comments or myself, because at the end of the day, it's just a card game. Also, this script was made before YCS Lima, which a lot of people, including myself, ended up forgetting happened. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into the list. Starting off our list at number 5, we have Trap Tricks. Now, Trap Tricks has become the talk of the Yu-Gi-Oh community right now, since fellow Yu-Gi-Tuber Pack took 3 structure decks to his locals and managed to defeat a lot of the top meta decks on such a budget, which not only shows how good of a player Pack is, but also to an extent how good Trap Tricks is right now. It's a control deck that thrives off gaining advantage by using normal trap cards, similar to its sister deck Labyrinth, which is currently tearing up the top tables right now, but more particularly it revolves around the Trap Hole series of cards. For the longest time, Trap Holes were never really the greatest cards, but they could not be in a better, stronger state right now. You have a permanent Book of Moon in the form of Floodgate Trap Hole, which is beautiful against a deck like Castro that requires its zones to be free, Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare, which is just a searchable Solemn Strike, and even the brand new Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare, which is not a trigger effect, it's rather an effect whenever you feel like, so as long as the condition has been met, you don't have to do it on summon or anything like that. Not to mention, due to destroying and banishing, it can even prevent the activation of effects like Mirror Jade's floating effect. Funnily enough though, the focal point of the deck isn't even so much the traps anymore, as it is the insane access to the rank 4 toolbox, one of the best tools in the entire game. You have cards like Abyss Dweller, which can basically just shut down any graveyard matchup, Baguska, which can slow the game down to your favor, Gaga Cowboy, of course, to push for game or go into time, and my personal favorite, Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, a card that most people don't see coming but is literally a free field wipe. They even have their own incredible rank 4s, such as the classic Trap Tricks for Flesia, which can substitute any trap hole on top of also being a blanket protection for all of your Trap Tricks monsters, Trap Tricks Alamaris, which can either steal your opponent's things or revive one of your Trap Tricks monsters to go for a further play, and of course the brand new Trap Tricks Pinguicula, which is a Rhoda, a Towers, and a Cyber Dragon Infinity style steal effect all in one. I could easily rant all day about how incredible the Trap Trick strategy is right now, but the video would end up taking over an additional 20 minutes, so if you want to see me go more in depth on the Trap Trick strategy, I have both a deck profile and a combo tutorial, both of which are in depth, where I discuss the entire archetype itself, as well as how to play it, so be sure to check that out if you somehow haven't already. But with all that said, don't fall for this deck's traps if you've been tricked into sleeping on it. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Fluanderies. Are you surprised to see this deck here? Well, personally, I was too, until I noticed the 3 regional and 1 YCS tops that this deck has combined under its belt, and then I remembered just how good this deck is. So yes, Flu did lose Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds on the most recent Forbidden and Limited list, which was its greatest and most powerful end-board piece period, but that's not really all the deck would boil down to. It's still an incredibly consistent deck with a fantastic resource game with plenty of 1 to 1.5 card combos and the ability to repeat its turn over and over again as its greatest strength. This allows them to easily loop cards like Rise of the Mega Monarch, which is a stupid powerful card that can not only remove things and get rid of their graveyard setup, but make sure you stack stuff on top of their deck so that they don't draw into anything that could potentially help them while you out-resource them. It's not even that hard for them to access these combos either, with 3 copies of Duality and Prosperity access in their main deck, but these can also help them dig for board breakers right now, such as the powerful Evenly Matched and Book of Eclipse. Speaking of which, the deck was already running things like Book of Moon to protect themselves from infinite impermanence before it was even cool, so now that not only protects their plays, but can also serve as a very powerful disruption in this format. To top it off, have we considered that Harpy's Featherstorm still isn't banned yet? Like between Duality, Prosperity, and even Trap Trick, this can easily win you a game like just completely on its own even if you don't combo off. The deck definitely isn't as strong as it was with Barrier Statue, but with the sheer amount of advantage that it can generate and easy access to power cards right now, it's enough for it to take the number 4 spot on this list for sure. Next up at number 3 we have Rika. Rika, Sun Avalon, Plant Link, whatever you want to call it, this deck is scary good and so few people are actually talking about it. The deck revolves around the crazy synergy that all the plant good stuff cards have, similar to something like Bee Trooper, with the Rika and Sun Avalon archetypes being the focal point of the deck. The Sun Avalon part of the deck mainly exists to access really strong combo endboards, with cards like Bengal Lancer, a monster bounce, Teardrop the Rika Queen, a monster tribute, Rika Princess, a monster negate, Rika Sheet, a monster steal, and so on and so forth. Yeah, they have a lot of monster interaction. The Rika side of the deck is where it gets a little bit more interesting though, and it's all due to a little card called Rika Cone Cone. So this is their field spell that isn't too crazy or anything. I mean, you can just set any Rika spell or trap directly from your deck, and I don't know, once per turn tribute your opponent's monsters for cost for your effects. Yeah, you're not only gaining advantage from your own card effects, but you're also tearing apart your opponent's board in the process, and there's nothing they can do about it due to it being for cost. This makes going second for this deck really easy compared to a lot of other rogue decks right now, especially with cards like Prosperity to dig for board breakers. You can even use it to grab something like Rivalry of Warlords, which is an admittedly strong card this format due to all the rogue running around. The deck has been popping up quite frequently at regionals with roughly 3 total tops to my knowledge right now, and I mean, hey, the deck did win the European National Championship last year, but the main thing holding back the deck was the price. Until now, with Maze of Memories reprinting just about every single card in the entire deck, making it a lot more affordable. Well, except for Snowdrop. Our semi-finalist for this list is going to be Naturia. So, I and a lot of other people thought that the limiting of all the Ishizu cards was going to severely cripple Naturia as a deck and make it take a really big backseat compared to a lot of the other stuff. I was wrong. In fact, without all the counters to tier running around, such as the other Ishizu cards, Dimension Shifter, etc., Naturia is even stronger than before, and it's definitely here to make a name for itself now. Naturia Mole Cricket, basically giving you one card access to Naturia Beast, is essentially an FTK against a lot of decks right now, especially something like Branded, for example, and especially when you combine it with the Runic cards, which is going to have a bunch of different disruptions, such as negating and popping your opponent's monsters, all while you set up your resource engine with Runic Fountain and your Naturia cards. On top of that, they can even topple the top trap decks right now, I say that 10 times fast, such as Trap Tricks and Labyrinth, because of Naturia Barkion being so powerful against them, and with cards like Naturia Sunflower, you won't have to worry about monster effects at any point either. Not to mention, half of this is usually done on the opponent's turn anyway, so you won't really have to worry as much about things like Nibiru running around because you'll almost always be under 5 summons. Even barring the Runic engine, which is the best engine though a little bit of a pretty penny right now, the Naturia package is so small and flexible that you can basically splash it into anything. Like, personally, I'm still waiting for someone to make Naturia Eldritch. But it's such an awesome deck that can pull off some really crazy endboards off of just 1 to 2 cards, and much like a lot of other decks on this list, it can easily help you win the resource game, which is so important right now. Because of this and its 3 regional and 1 YCS tops, it's going to take the number 2 slot on this list. Before we get into the number 1 pick of this list, I want to mention that if you have enjoyed the video so far, please be sure to leave a like, as it helps put the video and the channel into the algorithm more than anything else, and if you really want to see more content like this and you don't want to miss any more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content, then perhaps consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss any awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content. But with that out of the way though, let's go ahead and get right into the final spot on this list. And now, my number 1 rogue deck for the March 2023 Yu-Gi-Oh format, I gotta give it to Mech. Yeah, Mech is back and with a vengeance right now. And with its 6 regional tops as of recording this video, it's no wonder why. Mech is a strategy that, much like a lot of other Cybers decks, revolves around either making a respectable endboard or OTKing off of just 1 to 2 cards in your hand, with the rest of them being hand traps or even board breakers right now. It was arguably the 3rd best deck in Power of the Elements format, up there with Sprite and Tier, but the introduction of cards like the Bestials and Darkwing Blast knocked it down a few pegs, and then the Ishizu cards and other things like Dimension Shifter ended up being the nail in the coffin for the deck. But with all that out of the way right now, Mech has come to reclaim its throne and take some names along with it. Typical Mech endboards can end on things such as IP Masquerena with enough materials on board to go for something like Appaloosa or Underworld Goddess. Some endboards even end on just Decode Talk or Heat Soul, relying on the advantage it gains to access a bunch of different hand traps in your deck and out-resource the opponent that way. However, all of these endboards do have one other thing in common, being Mech Super Factorial. Super Factorial is a Revolt-esque trap card that allows them quick effect access to Prime Mech Laplacian, And let me tell you, this is a really crazy boss monster. You get to send a monster and a back row without targeting, but you also get to rip a card out of their hand. It's essentially a +3 in card advantage, but it doesn't even stop there. Usually the Laplacian is made using Mathematic Diameter, which literally gives Laplacian an Omni-Negate. So off of just Super Factorial, you're sending 2 from their field, ripping 1 from hand, and getting a free Omni-Negate on a sizable boss monster. Yeah. Not to mention that considering all of this is made off of just 1 card, all the other cards in your hand, especially the ones drawn off Deco Tucker Heat Soul, can end up being hand traps or follow-up cards to go for the kill next turn. The deck can struggle a bit going second against a deck like Castro right now, due to Castro Rysar being a walking macrocosmos and turning off Mathmech Circular, but considering the sheer amount of room for hand traps and board breakers in your deck, you're kinda just banking on your opponent not making the Rysar in the first place, and it seems to be working right now. It's such a powerful and admittedly scarily cheap deck right now that with the right pilot can absolutely steamroll through the competition, and that's why it's taking the #1 spot on this list. And that's going to do it for my top 5 road decks of the March 2023 format. So as I mentioned, this is based on tournament statistics that might even be faulty right now due to how many regionals have already taken place since I made this script, but the point is there are so many different decks you can play right now. So be sure to let me know in the comments, what deck are you playing this format? Is it meta, or would you consider it to be more of a rogue deck? Also, again, if you haven't seen it already, be sure to check out my top 5 meta decks video that, again, will be in the annotation in the top right. But with that out of the way, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.